Now let me introduce our chief guest for this morning, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, who has had a distinguished career in which he has acquitted himself with honor and distinction at several onerous positions, including Director General Strategic Plans Division, Chief of General Staff of Pakistan Army, and finally as Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. He is also a scholar general, and every time he addresses a conference, I have found him to be well prepared, breaking new horizons of thought. I had the privilege to host him in the United States when I was there, and he had come in his capacity as the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. But besides his other official engagements, he addressed some of the American think tanks and defended Pakistan's perspective with dignity and logical arguments. We are pleased to have him deliver today's inaugural address on Pakistan and the world order. Please welcome me in joining General Zubair Mahmood Hayat. Sir.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ambassador Azhar Chaudhry Sahab, Ambassador Chilani Sahab, General Zahid, my German friends, Ambassador Nagmana, Vice Admiral Sham, and many other faces that I know, but more importantly, the eminent speakers of today and the young students, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I keep visiting various universities and think tanks in Pakistan to share my perspective on many issues. But this is my first time to be here at Sanober. Obviously, Sanober is a new institute, but it has emerged as a strong pillar of strategic discourse in Islamabad, and therefore my compliments to you and all those who have made this happen. You've asked me to speak on a very difficult subject. How is the word disorder impacting Pakistan? Well, I'll try and give you my sense of this. I believe that we are living through a time that refuses to be explained by old maps, old theories, and old certainties. And as a soldier, these were my 3 comfort points. The world that once appeared structured, predictable, and governed by rules, as my German friend was alluded to, is now dissolving into something more fluid, contested, and uncertain. What we are witnessing is not merely instability. To me, it is a disruptive transformation. A transition from order, rule-based order, as he said, to me, a disorder. From clarity to ambiguity, and from hierarchy to a fragmentation. But let me say, this order is no longer abstract. It is visible, it is violent, and it is accelerating. The war in Ukraine has shattered assumptions about conventional deterrence in Europe. What was once considered unthinkable has now become normalized, prolonged, and probably at an industrial scale. Simultaneously, the confrontation involving Israel, United States, and Iran has pushed the Middle East towards a dangerous threshold where escalation is no longer hypothetical, but operationally rehearsed. And while we are in a pause, the world has changed. Unpredictability now rules the roost. These are not, to me, isolated conflicts. They are, as I pick them, strategic signals. Signals that the old restraint is fading and that the new area is defined by risk-taking, to say the least, by the major powers. For a country like Pakistan, therefore, this moment is not distant. It is immediate, intimate, and deeply consequential to Pakistan. As a middle power of consequence, Pakistan basks in diplomatic glory, but no one understands better than Pakistan that global disorder is often misunderstood as chaos. It is not chaos. It is an existential competition without settled rules. It is power being exercised without consensus. It is influence pursued without restraint. And in such an environment, the question for any state is simple. Do you drift with the events, or you try and shape them? Pakistan today stands at the intersection of these multiple fault lines. Geopolitical, geoeconomics, technological, and internal. I've identified 4. To me, these are not separate pressure points. They are converging forces, and their interaction is what defines the strategic environment that we must understand. First, let's consider the geostrategic and geopolitical landscape. The era of unipolarity has most definitely ended. There is no two roads about it. The rise of China, the strategic recalibration of the United States, the assertiveness of the regional powers like India, and the emergence of players such as Russia have created a multipolar contest. Middle powers are also asserting their roles. But this multipolarity is not stable. It is competitive, it is highly transactional, and it is highly unpredictable. And more importantly, as the Ambassador Saab was saying, it is increasingly militarized. The Ukraine war has demonstrated that the great power competition is no longer confined to economics or diplomacy, and that it can revert decisively towards a kinetic conflict. At the same time, the Israeli-Iran-US dynamic shows how regional rivalries can accelerate into a system-wide crisis which threaten to demolish civilizations. I thought I'll never hear that word in my life. Civilizations will cease to exist. For Pakistan, this means that the comfort is gone. The space for strategic ambiguity is shrinking. Every partnership is being scrutinized. Every decision carries layered consequences. The margin for error has become dangerously thin. Second, the nature of conflict itself has transformed. Wars are no longer formally declared. I mean, the US Congress has not declared this war. And victory is rarely decisive. Instead, what we are seeing is a persistent competition in a gray zone, where economic coercion, information warfare, cyber operations, proxy conflicts, and precision strikes below the threshold of a full-scale war have become the primary tools of some of the powers in the world. This is where I believe we must introduce a sharper understanding of the great power competition. It is no longer a distant contest between two major states. It has become diffuse competition, penetrating regions, penetrating institutions, penetrating markets, and even penetrating societies. States like Pakistan are and can no longer be observers. They are arenas where influence is contested, dependencies are created, and alignments are tested. This has direct implication. The traditional focus on territorial defense, while still essential, is no longer sufficient. The real contest increasingly lies in the perception, in the narrative, in economic resilience, and in institutional strength. A state can lose without a single shot being fired, simply by being outmaneuvered in these invisible domains. Third, the economic dimension of the global disorder is perhaps the most unforgiving. The global economy is fragmented now in blocks. Supply chains are weaponized. Financial systems, and my German friend spoke about the IMF, are now an instrument of pressure. Energy, food, and technology are no longer neutral commodities. They are strategic assets. The Ukraine conflict reshaped energy flows, but the Middle Eastern conflict threatens global energy security beyond the elastic limit. Things are probably never going to be the same again. Sanction regimes have become tools of coercion. For Pakistan, which relies heavily on external financing and imports critical resources, this environment is particularly unforgiving. Vulnerability in economics translates directly into vulnerability in sovereignty. Strategic autonomy cannot be exercised without economic resilience. Fourth, technology is redefining power. In artificial intelligence, data, cyber capacity, and space are not just tools. They are not determinants of national strength. The Ukraine and the Middle East war has shown how drones, data, and real-time intelligence can reshape battlefield. These wars demonstrate not only that how precision, speed, integrate, define escalation dynamics, but that resistance is not a past tense. The countries that master these domains will shape the rules of the future. Those that lag behind will find themselves constrained, dependent, and reactive. No wonder Europe is now wanting to rearm itself. But it may be too little and too late. Pakistan faces a hard reality here. Its current displayed weight must be complemented by bridging the gap between aspiration and capability in economic and technological domains. This requires a deliberate, sustained investment in human capital, research, and innovation, without which the country risks being a consumer of technology rather than a producer of influence. Fifth, we must address the nuclear dimension. Global disorder is eroding traditional nuclear certainties. Deterrence holds and holds strongly, but it is under stress. In Ukraine, a nuclear power, Russia, is engaged in a prolonged conventional war under the shadow of escalation. In the Middle East, two nuclear powers have attacked a non-nuclear power. And therefore the question in the Middle East of a nuclear thresholds is no longer a theoretical proposition. For Pakistan, as a nuclear state, the environment demands exceptional clarity. Nuclear capability ensures survival, absolute survival, but it does not guarantee strategic success. It creates absolute space, but it does not define what is done within that space. The real challenge is to integrate the nuclear deterrence into a tangible, broader framework of stability, escalation control, and credible conventional and sub-conventional capabilities. And lastly, the sixth, the internal cohesion has become a strategic variable. In an era of global disorder, external actors, they exploit internal divisions. We saw this being attempted in Iran. Societies that are fragmented, polarized, or uncertain about their own direction become easy targets for manipulation. Pakistan's internal challenges, economic stress, governance issues, and social fragmentation are not isolated domestic concerns. These are strategic vulnerabilities. They shape how the world perceives Pakistan and how adversaries approach it and how partners they engage with it. And yet within the landscape of challenges lies the opportunity. The sweet spot moment of the last few days indicate that space. Global disorder by the very nature disrupts established hierarchies. It creates opening of states that are agile, disciplined, and strategically clear. It rewards those who can think long-term while acting decisively in the present. Pakistan possesses certain enduring strengths. Its geostrategic location, as you mentioned, sir, connecting South Asia, Central Asia, Middle East, and South Asia, its demographic profile, as you also mentioned, with a young and dynamic population, and its military experience, shaped by decades of complex security challenges. These are not trivial assets. But assets alone do not create power. They must be organized, directed, and sustained through a strategy. What then is required? First is a clarity of purpose. A nation must know what it seeks to achieve. I'm not sure many in the world at this moment are in that category. Not in vague terms, but in precise, actionable objectives. Without clarity, policy becomes reactive, and reaction, as you all know, is the enemy of strategy. Second, economic stabilization and reform. No strategic ambition can be sustained on a fragile economic foundation. Fiscal discipline, export competitiveness, energy security, food security, and institutional credibility are not economic issues alone. They are national security imperatives. Third, technological prioritization. We are, by nature, a technologically savvy nation. Very few understand that. Pakistan, therefore, must identify critical technological domains and invest in them with focus and continuity. This requires not just funding, but a cultural shift towards innovation and merit. Fourth is narrative control. In a world of information contest, perceptions, they create realities. Pakistan must articulate its story with confidence, consistency, and predictability. Since silence creates space for others to define you, we must define our own selves. Fifth is the internal cohesion. A divided nation cannot act with a purpose. Political maturity, institutional balance, and social harmony are not ideals. These are now strategic necessities. Finally, leadership, not merely in positions, but in mindset. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me start concluding. Global disorder, unfortunately, is not a passing phase. It is the defining environment of our time. It is already being written in the trenches of Ukraine and in the escalation ladders of the Middle East. It will test assumptions. It will expose weaknesses, but it will reward those who have strategic clarity. For Pakistan, the choice is not whether it will be affected or not. It is already affected. The real choice is whether it will remain peripheral to this unfolding transformation, or it will emerge as a state that understands the nature of the moment and responds with clarity, resolve, but above all, a strategic intent. History is not written by those who wait for stability. It will be written by those who will navigate the instability at this moment with the purpose. We have demonstrated that we can do that. This provides us with both a reset moment and a jump-off point. Are we as a nation prepared to capitalize on this reset moment and a jump-off point? That, to me, is the strategic question. And I thank you for a patient hearing. Thank you.